Hello again, this is Brian King. I'm an entrepreneur and business relationship coach, and I'm here to help executives and entrepreneurs transform the conversation between their ears and between themselves and their peers so that they can create more empowered and productive teams. Ready to get started? Awesome, because this week's guest is Amy Riley. She is a training and development consultant, also a leadership coach, a pregnancy coach, and an author. She's passionate about people leveraging their strengths and reaching their full potential in all areas of their life, not just business. Amy has 2 businesses she's founded so that she can really do the work she loves. But today we're going to focus on just one of those businesses. It's called Shoup Consulting Group. And she found that consulting group in 2003 with a mission to help entrepreneurs and client organizations achieve breakthrough results. Amy provides customized learning, development, and coaching solutions. So without further delay, welcome Amy Riley.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me on the podcast today.
It's an absolute pleasure. I know we're going to have a fun conversation. And I want to begin with a quote that I found on your website. And I believe that we're going to be repeatedly going back to this idea that's in this quote throughout our discussion. The quote is this, and it's by Anais Nin. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Which really means we can get trapped in our comfort zone. We can decide to get totally immersed in our systems, the way we do things, and because of our adherence to the rules and not being savvy to when they need to be adjusted, tweaked, or jettisoned and replaced altogether, we can really sabotage our business and our lives. Is that basically why you chose that one, Amy?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up this quote, Brian. I put that on my website a long time ago, and don't know if I think about it as frequently as I'd like to. And when you bring that up, I'm like, oh yeah, that is on there. I love the experience when folks get the clarity about what they want, which is often about what they want to be different, and they get that commitment. I am going to make that happen. And that's when that discomfort with the current place becomes more uncomfortable than it would be to step out of the quote-unquote comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we really need the pain of that ongoing sameness to really push us into something new.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, just from the introduction that I read to everybody, that you had something similar happen to you, where you wanted to do what you loved and something kind of pushed you forward. So tell us the story, the circumstances that gave birth to Shoup Consulting.
Great, thanks for asking. And I think the creation of Shoup Consulting Group was one of those desires that was dormant for a while, maybe mostly unconscious for a while, until I found those circumstances in which I wanted to start a business. I think I knew some part of me knew, long before the conscious part of me knew, that I was going to start a business. After I decided to get into training and development and found that field and was really enjoying it, I had the experience of working at 2 different companies that were very different. One was retail, one was manufacturing, one was highly diverse, the other one was not as diverse. The cultures were completely different. The size and structure of the organizations were different. And I was a training professional leader inside of both of those companies. And I discovered that I would use my similar training approaches to create learning experiences, yet, the outcome was really, really different from one organization to the other. So learning about different businesses and learning about different people and what's best going to meet their needs and be most relevant and useful to them in this moment became a passion of mine, and I saw I could do that more readily if I have my own business and I'm doing consultant work. rather than being internal to one organization.
So by virtue of working for two different business cultures, two different processes at the same time, you realize just how applicable your skill set was in multiple contexts. Is that correct?
Yes. And I realized my desire to create those customized experiences that are going to work best because this corporate culture is like this. Or these folks have these preferences, or this has been their experience to date. I liked figuring out what's going to make best sense for this specific set of circumstances.
So now that you've been out there for a while, I believe the start date was 2003, so you've really had a chance to really find your niche, right?
Yeah.
So of all the things you could be doing, yes, you were in the context where you were using similar skills, but now that you've been out there more, have you found that some nuts are tougher to crack? You know, some systems are much more resistant to change?
Yeah, there are differences. I mean, luckily, usually when I'm brought into the conversation, it's because they want to do something differently, and I really I do my best to balance meeting them where they're at with also challenging them to the next level, what I know is possible, and I think sometimes it's really an art deciding where, okay, I see something as possible for the client organization or for the individual. What about trying X? And it's really an art knowing when they resist it. Is it because they're really not ready for it yet? Or is it because, oh gosh, this is going to represent a big step out of the comfort zone? And it can take a lot of questioning, really, and spending some time with the client to really figure out where are they at and what's going to best challenge them. So, you got to be that good consultant that takes the time and really make sure that you're putting together the solution that's going to feel like the best fit for them and really is going to get them where they want to go.
Well, and those questions you just put out there are useful for any business owner to ask themselves repeatedly. Do we have any problems here today? Is this the direction we want to be going in? Do we have the resources we need? Is everybody on board? Is anybody sabotaging this? So that you are not just so focused on your part of things that you lose track of the big picture where somebody is off to the side throwing a monkey wrench in the gears and you don't know why things aren't moving. But then when you come in, it's because they've identified a problem already. They know something needs to be done about it, but they're not quite sure what that's going to look like, and you can kind of help them figure that out, right?
Yes, that's a part of the process that I really enjoy, Brian, is designing the solution and designing it together with the client. Because there are, if somebody wants a more engaged workforce or they want higher, they want better teamwork or they want stronger leadership. It's tying it into, okay, why is this going to make a difference for your organization? So tying it into the bottom line and also exploring all the different ways that we could do that. There's coaching, there's training, and there's an infinite, possibility for creating blended learning solutions.
That's exciting to hear you approach it that way. Because there are some consulting approaches where they just come in and tell you what to do. They're almost like the parent running into your room and say, all right, I'm in charge. Everybody sit down and listen. I'm going to tell you what to do. And what you and myself as well, when I consult, we realize that there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to solutions.
Right.
You have your own unique combination of skills and challenges. You have varying leadership styles. You have, depending on the business, you could be working at a retail place that has a bunch of millennials working there or some teenagers, and you need to communicate differently with them than you need corporate people that have been there for 15 or 20 years. So you really have got to be able to adjust to your audience. And I imagine that the collaborative approach is not only refreshing but very empowering to the people you're working with, because they feel from the get-go there's a lot more investment. There's a lot more in it for them because they're contributing to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you find their enthusiasm just really, get jazzed when you approach them this way, like, okay, we are going to come up with this solution together. It's going to be something we can all get behind and something that we can have a shared celebration of our success together.
Yeah, yeah. The best outcome, Brian, is when they feel, and it really is to a great degree, their idea. This is their solution, this is their company, this is their team, and this is how we're going to improve things here. I just did I did a workshop with an organization here in Chicago that's downtown. They have about 18 employees, and they wanted everybody to be engaged at a higher level, working with one another more effectively with a workforce of that size. If there's some wheels that aren't churning in the right direction or some folks that aren't getting along as well as they can, it becomes really evident when there's a smaller number of people around. So they wanted to do some things, and we put something together, and they were a leader and a driver in what we were going to create. And so they, without my involvement, they had this great introductory kickoff communication in their company. They did some fun things. They did a little skit about how interactions could look better. They got really enthused and brought their leadership in, had their leadership sharing why they thought this workshop could make a difference. And so far, we've only done one workshop together. So it's great when they think it's their idea, and they're the ones that are teeing it up. So I'm not the consultant knocking on the door. Hey, have you thought about when we're going to schedule this next workshop? No, they're chomping at the bit to get that on the calendar because they know what it's going to be about and what it's going to accomplish.
So you gave them opportunities to play a little bit as part of your plan.
Yeah.
And what some people don't realize when you do things like that is you're not only adding fun to it, you're also inviting them to be a little vulnerable with their coworkers. And their coworkers who are in the audience while the rest of them are doing the skit can cheer them on in those moments of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. Do you find that they're able to make that connection, that that's what they're actually getting out of it? Or do you process that later?
We'll process that later. Can process it almost immediately. I'm a big believer in you do something real together, and then you debrief it. What did we learn from it? What worked? What insights are you having? And sometimes I find myself just asking those really open-ended questions. What are your takeaways? What are your insights? What did you get out of this activity? Why do we just do that?
Because one thing that can be so powerful is when they have those new experiences, like that vulnerability, wearing their humanity on their sleeve, and immediately assigning some empowered beliefs to that. That felt very refreshing. I felt so supported. And to have the rest of them say, yeah, I really felt good about being here and cheering you on. They need to say it out loud. They need to feel it. They need to hear it from each other so that the likelihood of that getting locked into their body is much more effective, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Now, you mentioned bringing the leaders in and talking about the leadership styles and why certain things work. But what some people may not realize is there are a lot of different leadership styles out there. So are there certain things that you have discovered about how to best work with different leadership styles in the work environment?
Yes. I think one thing that I tell folks about working with others and working with other leaders and how to have it be most effective is to really tune in. Tune in and understand what's my style, what are my preferences, what are my go-to behaviors, and tune in to what your coworkers, the other leaders in the organization, what's their style, what's their go-to behaviors. This group that I was referencing, Brian, the team of 18, I did a DISC assessment with them. So we had the really nice opportunity to talk about here are some different defined style preferences and talking about what's the value, what's the advantage of each of those different styles. Being able to clearly see no one style is better than the other. Each style brings its value to the organization. And I'll say, you don't need a DISC assessment in order to be able to do this. You just tune into some of those preferences that you have. Are you someone that likes to get right down to business and dive into the numbers in the deep end? Or are you someone that needs a little chit-chat and a little warm-up before we start talking about business? Are you someone that's really comfortable with a fast rate of change? Or are you someone that needs some time to sit back and analyze how is this going to impact the different stakeholders? What do we really want to do here? And just notice that there's differences and there's value in those differences. Yet tuning into, hey, what are my preferences? What are other preferences? Are going to have you start to see ways that you could shift and modify to others' preferences to have interactions go as effectively as possible.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, tuning in is basically about paying attention to how it is you go about getting what you want.
Yeah.
Okay? Whether it's you or your coworkers. Are some people a little bit more authoritative? Are they pushy? Are they demanding? Are some much more collaborative? They want to make sure everybody's happy. Is there somebody that is the quintessential peacemaker who doesn't want any conflict and brushes things under the rug, but then you have all this stewing resentment as a result? And that kind of toxicity can create problems as well. So, and I love the simplicity of it. Just tune in, pay attention, see what's going on around you. How do people operate in their environment? Then you can start looking at, it gets me the results I want, but is it causing as many or more problems than it's solving? That's a question that many people don't ask themselves. Because in my wife's previous working environment, it was so toxic. The managers at all levels operated through intimidation. I want the numbers, give me what I want, hey, I can, you're just a number to me. Somebody actually said that to her, hey, you're just a number to me. If you don't like it, I'll find somebody else to replace you. And then wanted her to go back to her desk and function with confidence. These people just didn't get it. It was so unfortunate.
Yeah.
Now, with that, you talked about the DISC assessment, figuring out their different styles. I imagine that some of those styles can be in conflict. You have two people that have very different communication or leadership styles, and you need to help them find that happy medium. So can you think of a specific time where you had that situation, and then share with us how you helped those two people find common ground?
Yeah, I like the specificity of your question, Brian. And a situation does pop to mind. Two really great employees. I happen to think of a manager and an employee in that manager's group, both well regarded in the organization, and was maybe a little bit easier for someone external to the situation to see that when they were struggling, that there were style differences at play. Specifically, there was a time where she, as the employee, wanted to ask her manager for more autonomy. And as she first started preparing for that conversation, Brian, it was all of the, he's doing this, he's doing this, he's doing this, he's doing this, and here's how it is negatively impacting me. Okay, so we took a step back, and hey, we don't know all of the intentions behind the actions that he's taking, the behaviors that you're seeing. So let's just assume that we don't know, and let's shift the conversation to, what do you want to ask for, and how could you frame it in a way that he best be able to hear it? So we ended up shifting that conversation to one where she simply stated, I'd like some more autonomy. I'd like to see if I can handle the ownership in owning this project and this project and this project, right? Not getting into you are micromanaging me in every area. But here are the specific projects where I would like some more autonomy. How can we set me up to succeed in those areas?
So you had to completely remove blame from that dynamic or any option for it. It was just an explanation of, let me explain how I'm hearing things, let me explain what I need, and let's talk about how we can create that together.
Absolutely, because where he was coming from was a very supportive, I like to touch in with people, I like to touch base frequently, it's important for me to build relationships, where she was starting to read all of those touch points as he's checking up on me. He doesn't trust that I can do this. So when she asked him, support me in getting more autonomy, that was right in his wheelhouse. I mean, he's interested in doing that. He's a supportive, I want to have a great relationship, I want you to excel and do well. Yeah, let's make that happen.
So he thought he was communicating to her that he cared because he was attending.
Yes.
And she read it as though, man, this guy doesn't trust me with anything.
Yes.
What's amazing about that is, guess what? They're both right according to their own filters.
Yes.
So it's a matter of just flushing it out there and saying, this is my worldview. This is how I see things. And by putting the rules out there, you can see why they conflict. Then, and this is one of my favorite things, you create new rules for that relationship.
Yes.
So that you make sure that meshes very well. And that's something I can't shout enough times from the rooftop, that relationships are and must be negotiated, especially in the workplace. If anybody stands behind the belief, that's how relationships work, that's the real world, you are lying to yourself. What you're saying is the way you understand relationships is the paradigm for the way humanity functions. No, it's not. It's your comfort zone. If you really want relationships to be effective in the workplace, there's got to be that flexibility to learn the other person's values, the other person's worldview, so that you can find the very necessary openness and connection to be able to team up more effectively. Now see what that does for the morale of your workforce. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The understanding that these two got about each other's style differences and their intentions. They then valued each other's input so much more. And they both took this great step towards each other. She actually started taking on more of his behavior. He started taking on more of her behaviors, and they met in the middle. They negotiated the rules for their relationship, like you just said.
And what's wonderful is how, when they are aware of each other's rules, that tuning in portion that you mentioned, they are now much more aware of factors that were previously completely off their radar, that are now at work in their relationship. So they have more input to adjust to. And like we mentioned, beliefs is a big part of this. Your beliefs about what work is like, what's professional versus unprofessional, what is a good result versus a bad result. And those beliefs really have a lot to do with how the day goes. And in the work that we are trying to help them do, because you and I know very well that strategies aren't going to do very good in the hands of somebody that doesn't believe that they'll work, right?
Yeah.
So in addition to what we've talked about so far, can you expand a little bit on what role beliefs play in the day-to-day interactions that we have in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. I'd like to do that. And I'll start off with a specific example. I was working with a woman once who was coaching a member of her team. And Brian, to hear her replay the coaching conversations that they had, it sounded like perfection. They had this great conversation, they laid out this great plan, but then what happened at the end of the day is that she couldn't quite believe that he could shift his behaviors. So then when he went off to do the work, that belief led her to micromanage, pull pieces back to her. She couldn't fully let him run with it. So when we uncovered that and she saw that for herself, the question she had was like, well, what do I do with that? Because she had real evidence, it seemed like evidence from the past. She had examples of where he had let the team down, where his behaviors didn't appear to be the most effective in the moment. So how do I just forget that? So we talked about shifting those, quote unquote, negative beliefs or disempowering beliefs or limiting beliefs, as they turned out to be in this case, to more neutral ones. And there was a bunch of stuff that we talked about, but two of the beliefs that she took on, Brian, really stuck with me because they ended up being really powerful for her. She said to herself, he deserves my attention and the opportunities to be all that he can be as an employee. As an employee of the company, he deserves that from me. Wow, what a powerful belief to come from, right? And it seemed kind of neutral in the moment. And the other thing that she decided is like, we are going to find out whether he's a good fit for this job or not. And when she took on those beliefs, there were new actions that were open to her. When she didn't believe that he could shift his behaviors, there was only certain actions that were possible for her. When she shifted those to something wider, more actions were possible. She now could leave the ball in his court a little longer. She could let him run with that, and they got different results. Now, ultimately, they did find out there were some parts of the job he wasn't a good fit for. And there were some parts of the job that he was a great fit for, even a better fit than this manager could have imagined. So she shuffled some things around with work responsibility, and she got Brian what she couldn't have imagined at the beginning. Her problem employee was now a strong performer.
So, two words I want to give that are to really encapsulate what you said, which is really, really important for people to understand, is when you're looking at your beliefs, you ask yourself, what results am I getting with this belief, and what options am I allowed to consider according to this belief? Because one thing that you mentioned was how new doors were opened up to her when she shifted it. You consider a new belief and like, wait a minute, I never even considered this approach before. Oh, look at all these wonderful doors that just opened. Because some people don't realize that their beliefs can be based on fear or hope or anger or ambition, and whatever the belief compels you to feel determines what options open up before you.
Exactly. I'm glad you pointed this out, Brian, because I would love people to use this almost formulaically. If there's an area of your life where you're not getting the results that you want, business project, or it doesn't even have to be business related, an area of your life where you're not getting the results that you want, come up a couple layers. Behaviors lead to the actions, lead to the results. If we're not getting the results, come back up to the beliefs. What are we believing? Is it limiting, or is it empowering? Or how can we shift it to be empowering? And then more actions will open up, and you'll find yourself getting different results.
You realize we have an acronym there? Beliefs, actions, results, BAR. So you can ask, where's the bar?
Perfect.
Are you lowering the bar? Are you raising the bar? What do you kind of align yourself that determines where the ceiling is? Because there are some people that have beliefs that, no, we can't do it that way. That goes against our mission statement, or that goes against our protocol. And they haven't examined it, they just accepted it. And they don't realize that the present location of the bar is part of the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep. If I'm thinking that me and Pete are never going to get along, we're like oil and water, then there's a lot of actions I'm never going to take.
Yeah, and those metaphors can get us in trouble too. We're like oil and water. Once you've made that decision, bam, you are forever in opposition.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Maintenance and production are always at odds.
As opposed to sometimes, we have a difficulty, seeing eye to eye, or there are many things we disagree on. Many is not all. Sometimes it's not always. When you use all or nothing terms, man, you slam the door shut to any options for improving that. So make sure that your language that describes the situation also allows for options to exist, even if you can't spot them right away.
Yes.
Now, Amy, this has been fun, just like I knew it would be. I'm so glad that you came on today and shared these wonderful insights. And I know you have a lot more. So please tell everybody that's watching where they can track you down in the wonderful world of cyberspace and learn more about you and from you.
Fantastic. So the email address is Amy, A-M-Y, at shoopconsulting.com. Shoop is spelled S-H-O-O-P. And that's the website address as well, www.shoopconsulting.com.
Awesome. Make sure you go out and check Amy's stuff. It's fantastic. And please share this episode with anyone that you feel would benefit from it. Don't forget to stop by my website also, which is brianrking.com, and send me an email. My email address is brianrking@me.com. Let me know how this episode has helped you, and feel free to ask me a question. And be sure to join us next time for another episode. Until then, this is Brian King saying, thanks for being you.